Hey, if you would love to teach your children more life skills like Lisa in Farmhouse on Boone is doing, or so many of the other guests we've had on the Restoration at Home podcast, check out the Peaceful Press homeschool curriculum. In the Peaceful Press homeschool curriculum, we include daily practical life skills activities. So these might be things like sorting laundry or baking a loaf of bread or unloading the dishwasher. And these practical skills really help children develop motor skills, comprehension skills as they're learning to listen and follow direction, and also reading skills as they're following a recipe or creating a project or making their own insect repellent or beeswax lip balm or so many of the other amazing projects we do in the Peaceful Press curriculum. So you can develop beautiful life skills in your children along with all these peripheral academic and motor skills just through using the Peaceful Press homeschool resources. We've linked a free sample of one of our bestsellers, The Playful Pioneers. It is based on the Little House on the Prairie book. So you get to read those beautiful stories of Laura Ingalls Wilder growing up on the prairie. And while you're reading the stories, you're making butter or making a little quilt or making a cloth doll. It's such an engaging homeschool year. We'd love to have you enjoy it in your family. We'll link that free sample in the show notes. And use code Restoration10 for 10% off any bundle in the Peaceful Press shop. This is Jennifer Pepito with the Restoration Home podcast. This is the show where we talk about cultivating a flourishing family culture through life-giving habits. Today on the show, I'm so excited to be chatting with Jamie Erickson. She's the author of several beloved books for homeschool moms, Homeschool Bravely, Holy Huga, and the latest one is Overwhelmed Mom, Quiet the Chaos, Find What Matters, and Enjoy Your Life Again. So such an encouragement to get to chat with you today, Jamie. You've been an inspiration to so many moms through your books. And this new one, helping moms to push back against burden and overwhelm so they can love their lives, is so encouraging.
Well, I am thrilled to be with you again, Jennifer. It's always a joy to chat with you. So thanks for having me.
I was just chatting today with members of the Restoration Home community, and we were talking about this whole idea of seasons in a mother's life, because I think that's part of what moms are dealing with is, a mom sees a homesteader online and they're like, I need to be a homesteader. And they see a mom having a big family and they're like, yeah, we can have more kids. And they see a mom who's, decorating their house really pretty. And they're like, yeah, we can have a beautifully decorated house. And they try to do everything all at once in the postpartum season. And that's when life really starts to fall apart. And honestly, even more intense things, I think, sometimes happen when we pile on too many expectations in a season that's not equipped for it. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, and I think we don't even necessarily have to look online and experience those seasons. I know even before social media was a thing, I was a young wife, young mom, and I could easily open up to Proverbs 31 and think, yikes, that is a lot of things, and be a little overwhelmed with this like gold standard of motherhood. And what we fail to remember about Proverbs 31, and what we fail often to remember about all these women that we see online that are doing wonderful things for their homes and families, is that one, they're not doing all of those things at one time. Like Proverbs 31 is actually a looking back of many snapshots of a woman's life. And by the way, she wasn't a real woman. We have to remember that as well. She was like a fictional woman that King Lemuel's mother made up in order to help him find a good mate. Like, look for these things. It was almost like she was the little red hen story of the day. And so we see her doing all these things. We see women online doing all these things, and we think they're doing them all at the same time. They're also doing all the things that we're doing. And we make this composite woman who's, Wonder Woman, who's doing all these things. But they're not doing all those things at once. And in fact, they're actually showing us what they're doing. They're not showing us what they're not doing. We don't get a window into that part of their lives. They're just kind of celebrating the wins. And in the case of Proverbs 31, we're actually looking back at many, many seasons of her life. So when you see her, buying and selling land and making all these wonderful textile goods, she may not be doing that with a baby and a toddler on her hip. Maybe she is, but chances are she's not.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder because if you are in a, postpartum season, you're really winning the most in eternal things if you're just looking that baby in the eyes while you breastfeed them. You know what I mean? You're
Yes.
really winning the most at eternal things if you're just really present and quiet with your young children because that is a season that will end. I have 7 kids and that season ended a long time ago for me. It was longer maybe than for most people, but it still ended. And so if you are trying to, be the businesswoman in the postpartum season, you might find yourself a little overwhelmed. If you're trying to be the, Bible study teacher in the postpartum season, you might find yourself a little exhausted. But if you can look at your life more in terms of seasons, you're going to be able to enjoy each season and then make the most of them, really steward that season.
Let me ask you this, Jennifer. Harken back to those days when you had many, many babies and many toddlers. What did you think about your life in the grand scheme when maybe wonderful opportunities came your way and you were tired because you were nursing, you were getting up to nurse a baby, you were in postpartum? What did you think about when opportunities were presented to you? Um, I'd love to hear your answer, and then I'll share what my answer
Yeah.
was.
Well, when I had my 5th baby, we lived on an 11-acre country property that was like a half hour from the nearest town. And so in that season, I was very intentional about what we took on. Like I only did piano lessons for my kids. That was a neighbor up the street and a choir that was once a week. And so I made it my intention to really like only leave my house a couple days a week
Hmm.
because I love literature-based homeschooling. And so I wanted to have those slow mornings of reading out loud to my children. I had a very clear vision from some books that I'd read earlier in my homeschool life of what I wanted our home life to feel like and look like. And so in that season, we were very intentional about staying home, working in our garden, doing the laundry, cleaning we just had a little house. It wasn't fancy, didn't do a lot of remodeling in that season. We had a lot of good family time. Things a little bit unraveled for us when we became missionaries
Sure.
because I feel like the hard things and the difficulties sort of led to like we made one bad decision that led to another bad decision. And so the seasons of my life that I feel like would have had the most negative impact on my kids were later in our family.
Okay. I'm going to throw myself under the bus for a second because I feel like I'm not the only one, and hopefully some listeners will resonate to what the say 2008 2009 Jamie felt like. So at that time I had 4 kids under 5. I went on to have another one, but that was probably my biggest most, like if you were to ask me how you feeling today, Jamie, I would have led with the word tired always.
Right.
I was just tired. But I had some wonderful opportunities set in front of me. An opportunity to start an online ministry, an opportunity to serve in leadership capacities in women's ministry at my church, things like that. And here's the thing, mamas who are listening, rarely do bad opportunities get presented to us. Like nobody's asking us to go down to the street corner and sell drugs, right? We're presented with really great things and often God honoring things. And so when that happened to me, I I knew the right choice was no, God has given me these 4 children. I'm already very tired. So that has to be my biggest yes. But I also had this little thought in the back of my mind. I had a bit of a scarcity mindset that this is my opportunity. This is my chance to do those big things that I really want to do and I dream about doing. And if I say no now, well, I've missed my boat. I've missed my chance. And I knew that I needed to say no. So, what often happens, and what at times happened to me, I said no, but then little seeds of bitterness started to grow. And who do you think got the fallout of that bitterness? My kids at times. It was really easy to point the finger. I would never say it out loud or do anything to make them feel like they were a hazard to the home or robbing me of purpose, but I felt it in my heart at times. I allowed seeds of bitterness to grow because of the no I felt I had to say, thinking, well, I've missed my chance. But what I failed to realize, and God did just exponential work in my heart through His Word, and I now see that was, like you said, a season. And seasons have boundaries for a reason. I want to just read a short passage from Psalms, if I could. It comes from Psalm 16, 5 through 11, and it says, Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You make my lot secure. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance. I will praise the Lord who counsels me. Even at night, my heart instructs me. I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With Him at my right hand, I will not be shaken. So that those verses talk about portion and boundary lines, and they actually hearken back to portions in the Torah, the earlier books in scripture where words like portion and lot and lines are used, when the people of Israel were taking God's instructions to divide the promised land up into land segments. So each tribe of Israel got their portion or their lot. And so God portioned it out and gave a boundary to, let's say, Issachar. This tribe of Issachar, this is your portion, this is your lot. And we often look at boundaries as stifling, as inhibiting. But actually, if we read those verses, it reminds us that God wasn't like hemming the Israelites in. He was keeping all the dangers and cares and concerns of the rest of the world out.
Mm.
And that is so life-giving. That shows His care and love for me in the season that I'm in. This boundary of small children, of nursing a baby, of staying up late through the night to help a sick toddler, that's not a punishment from the Lord. It's not a boundary that's hemming me in. It's actually allowing me to keep all the cares and concerns of a different season that will come out.
Yeah.
And that's His care for me.
Yeah, such a good reminder. That was one of my favorite verses in that early missionary season as well, Jamie. Just the
Wow.
reminder that God has, that it's nothing is an accident. The things that you're going through today, you moms listening, like life is full of hardships. Even in that season of life that I would have said was a more idyllic homeschool season for us, we weren't living off grid. We weren't having children almost, bleed to death from a routine tonsillectomy. We still had challenges. We had a child who had seizures. We had, the little annoying sicknesses that happen, or the little, car breakdowns that happen. And so there were still moments, even in that sort of easier season of my life, in the sense of, living in the same place and loving where I lived, that I had to remind myself, God has ordained the boundary lines of my life. There's no mistakes here.
Mm-hmm.
He loves me and He has good plans. And I think that right there is just a perfect beginning reminder to moms, whatever season you're in, no matter how overwhelmed you feel, just know that God is with you, walking with you through it. You're not alone. You're not abandoned. There's not some kind of punishment that's happening to you. God is a good God. He does good things in our lives. And so just recognizing that there are going to be seasons where we're learning something through trials, where life is just harder, but that's an opportunity to develop a testimony, develop strength of character, develop grit.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that Viktor Frankl talks about for people who are in a hard season is that you have to have a purpose. So I talk a lot in my work about having a vision as a mom. How can having some kind of vision help anchor moms who are feeling overwhelmed?
Well, I want to get back to that word purpose. I think that is a good word for anyone, not just mothers. I find myself giving that word to my children when they're going through a hard season of, here's here's what I want you to pray. I want you to pray these two things. Whenever my kids are in a hard season, I always tell them this. Pray these two things. One, God, give me purpose today. Because whenever you're in a hard season, you feel a lack of vision. You feel a lack of purpose. All you can see is the hard thing right in front of you. And the second thing, which I think mothers can pray as well, not just kids going through hard seasons, God, give me purpose. But then two, God, show me someone who is struggling or in a hard thing and show me how to meet that need. Because anytime you see someone else's hardship, it often minimizes your own. It really helps us have less of a me-centered life. So those are the two things that I really encourage my kids to pray, and what I pray for in my hardships. But to your question, I think two things really help me and have helped me, especially in those early years when I felt like my kids are robbing me of purpose, or I feel stuck in this really hard season. One is to acknowledge the fact that the enemy wants you to live in the places that you cannot change. The enemy wants you to look back to the past or look ahead to the future. Look back to the past on, like, oh, when I didn't have these children, my life was so much easier, or whatever it is. When I wasn't in this season, life was easier. Or he wants you to look to the future when your children get older and they don't all need to be in car seats and you're not having to zip up all their coats or bathe them or wipe their bottoms. Life will be so much easier. But God has you right here, right now, for a purpose. So be where your feet are, and that will help you see the vision and the purpose of right now when you are where your feet are. And then I think, too, the second thing that helped me and still continues to help me, I still rely on this. This is still my go-to, is to put God's word ever before me. When I can write out scripture and I can meditate and recall the goodness of God, having verses right in front of me, it reminds me that God will meet me in a season or in a boundary line where I'm nursing a newborn in the middle of the night. God will meet me in a season when I have a house full of toddlers who are all demanding my attention this very moment. God will meet me in a season when I'm juggling work and home and now homeschool, and I feel guilty because I'm being pulled in 3 different areas and I don't think I'm doing any of them right or well enough. God will meet me in a season when I have the sin scars of this world, whether something that I did or something that was done to me, when I'm just in a hard season, because in this world, you will have trouble. God will meet me there. But it really is in his word that I get that great reminder. I am with you always.
Yeah. It's so encouraging. Thinking about vision, one of the things that you have people do in the book is actually write kind of a vision statement. And I have read about this in business workshops where you say, I am a homeschool mom who helps mothers reclaim joy through my writing,
Mm-hmm.
or, things like that. But you have moms do this, and I'd love to hear why you thought to do that and what was some of the thinking behind that.
Well, I mean, it is like a mission statement of a business. As a business owner, you know that you don't know where you're trying to get, and you have no goal to hit, and unless you sit down and think about, like, where am I at? Where do I want to be? I think the difference between a mission statement and a vision statement is, as a mom, my life is very transient. Every single day is different. I'm in charge of these people that have their own opinions, that have their own personalities, and so I cannot necessarily forecast what the next 5 years of my life will be. A vision statement actually isn't about the future. It's actually about right now. What do I want my life to look like right now? And without that vision, I really do lack purpose. And it might sound, like plan B type personalities might really buck up against this idea of sitting down and writing out a vision statement. But what it has done in my own life is, as I'm sure you can attest, moms get asked to do a lot of things, especially homeschool moms, because let's face it, half of society thinks we sit around in our jammies eating bonbons and watching soap operas all day, right? So if there's a task that needs done, you ask a homeschool mom because surely she's not doing anything else. So I get asked to do a lot of things. And like I said before, what I get asked to do is most often good things. They're not bad things. And so I have to be really discerning and sift all those things through what my vision is. Otherwise, I'm giving a one of my limited yeses to something that doesn't really matter to me. And in turn, I'm giving a no to something that does matter to me. So that vision statement really does help me sift out or sift through all the yeses. Here's my tip for making a vision statement as a mom. Think about um, who who you are. What are your names? Well, if I were to make that list, I'd have to say my current names are I'm a child of God, first and foremost. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, I'm a writer, I'm a speaker. Those are the typical names that I'm called. So I keep that in the back of my mind. Who are the people that I am privileged to serve in my life, and make a list of those. I'm privileged to serve my husband Dane, my 5 children, extended family, a really tight knit close circle of friends. I have neighbors that I serve. I serve my local church members. I actually, along with you, Jennifer, serve local and national homeschool moms, or even worldwide homeschool moms. So those are the people I serve. So I'm thinking about, what are my names? Who do I serve? And then how best do I serve them? In other words, what are my giftings that God has given me? And I list all of those out. And from that listing, then I can put together a little statement. And my statement needs to be something like this: I am a, and then you insert your name, who serves this particular people group by whatever it is, skills or passions. And just in doing that, writing out that simple sentence, it gives me the courage to say no to things that might be really well intentioned things, might be really good yeses, but they're not my yes to give.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder. We write a couple different ways with the Habits for a Sacred Home. We write a rule of life.
Mm.
And then in the Restoration Home community, we start the year by just writing, what do you want your kids to remember about life in your home? Because it is true. There's a lot of things that come at us. Last year I was invited to speak at a homeschool conference that I love. It's so much fun. And I said no because I knew there was already so much going on that month. And my kids are teenagers now. Like, the youngest are 19 and 17. And so partly it's like, oh yeah, they don't really need me anymore. Like, they don't need me to cook for them. But they're still my children. I still want to connect with them. I still want to be there for them. It doesn't the intensity of it doesn't diminish necessarily as they get older. My adult daughter, I think by the time this airs, will have gotten married. And so I'm talking to her most days about the micro wedding that she's planning. And I have a grandbaby who lives on the other side of the country. Most days I spend time talking to my grandbaby on a FaceTime call. And so there are a lot of things that are going to be always coming at us, opportunities, no matter how like small our lives or successful we are. There's going to be these things coming at us, and we have to know what our values are, because it's made it easy. My, even talking about the Peaceful Press and Restoration Home community, my businesses have maybe grown a little slower in some ways because I've said no to a lot of things, or, spent more time reading out loud to my kids and learning SEO. But it also means that I've been able to be really intentional about what I'm actually teaching moms. I've lived it. And so I think being very clear, like the other thing I did, Jamie, is I actually wrote what I want people to say at my funeral. Like, I thought even about, like, when my kids come home for Christmas, now they're not all living at home and we're not all together all the time. Like, when they come home for Christmas, what do I want them to experience? When people are at my funeral, what do I want them to say about me then? Because moms, you are living a legacy. Like, we are a city set on a hill. We are, the bride of Christ. And so we're living a legacy. It's not just about, getting these kids out of diapers or getting these kids off to college or whatever the goal, the like small goal might be. It's about living a legacy life that you might be someone that people write books about someday. Like I wrote, in Habits for a Sacred Home, there's all these biographies of great women of faith who made an impact for good. And they were just living their lives, but they were living their lives with intention. I love that you talk about that in the Overwhelmed Mom, about just having something that you're working towards. And then the other thing that you talk about is knowing how to eliminate things. Like I just had moms today in a restoration home community call do a brain dump, basically write down everything they do. And, again, if you're a mom who also wants to write, or you also want to coach, or you also want to do whatever else, the the list of things that you have to do is going to grow, because you'll still have to feed your family, you'll still have to make sure the bathrooms get cleaned. And then how do you discern what you do, what you outsource, and what you just absolutely forget about for a season? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I want to go back for a second to what you were sharing about your family. It's not that your children don't need you, they just need you in less relentless ways. And the difference between an overwhelmed mom and a mom who enjoys their life often isn't the number of activities they do. It's that the mom who has chosen her yeses, the things that she really wants to do, and she prioritizes her own life, will enjoy it, as opposed to a mom who just says yes out of guilt or coercion. You might be equally as busy, Jennifer, to somebody who's overwhelmed, but because you've given intentional yeses to your adult children, to your grandchild, somebody might argue, well, that's not necessary. You don't need to do that. You've chosen to do that. That is a priority to you. Therefore, you will enjoy your life so much more because you're building the life that you actually want to have. And to your point about legacy, we have to remember as moms, we are building for the years that we cannot see. So I am pouring into my children, and they will take that with them as they launch, and then they will touch other people's lives with the way I have touched them, including their own children, and those children will touch their children. And the mothering that I'm doing right now, mamas, if you're hearing me, the mothering that you're doing right now will affect generations upon generations upon generations. You will not ever know until eternity what your mothering has done, what God has been able to do through you and through your mothering.
Yeah, such a good reminder.
But to editing your life, I mean, I think it goes back to that vision statement. That is a really clear way to know. I'll give you an example in my own life. I was asked to come and represent my family, and I serve at a soup kitchen once a month. I'm very familiar with the soup kitchen. We've been serving there for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And my family, or I was asked to come and represent that soup kitchen in a ministry conversation. They were sort of wanting, the powers that be were sort of wanting to determine whether that soup kitchen is worth its salt, whether it's being effective. What is the end result? And so I was representing the people who serve, and the person in charge said, actually, I serve on a board, a charitable board, and we're looking for board members. I would love for you to join it, Jamie. And I think part of that was just, I feel like God has equipped me to articulate thoughts well. Not that I'm the best soup kitchen provider or nurturer or servant, but I just can put my words into succinct thoughts, right? So he wanted me to join this board. Now, was that a good opportunity? Absolutely. Did it sort of run parallel to some other ministries I was already involved in? Yes, it did. But I went back to my own personal vision statement and said, this is a good opportunity. It's a good yes, but it's not my yes to give. So when I talk about in my book, Mind What Matters, yes, that matters, but it doesn't necessarily have to matter as much to me because it's not my yes to give. So that's one of the ways that I help myself in editing my life. I think another way is a couple years ago, I had this realization that, we use the term, I'm spinning a lot of plates. When you're busy, you're spinning a lot of plates. And that is true. I sometimes feel like a circus juggler in my life, spinning all these plates. But a few years ago, I had this realization that, yes, I'm spinning a lot of plates, but the plates aren't all the same. And yet I'm treating them the same. I have china plates that I'm spinning, and those are plates that if they drop, that would be irreparable. Like, I wouldn't be able to repair them in quite the same way. I would be devastated. It would be a great loss if I dropped my china plate and it got destroyed. I have porcelain plates, even clay or pottery plates. They're important. Certainly, if they dropped, could I replace them? Maybe I could glue them back together. They wouldn't be quite the same, but they'd still work. I have plastic plates. I even have paper plates that I'm spinning. And in just listing out all my roles and responsibilities and assigning them, like, is this a china plate? Is this a porcelain plate? Is this a paper plate? I could easily see at a glance, a quick glance, which are the things that, yes, I enjoy doing. Like I host a book club once a month at my house for friends. I enjoy doing that. But I put that in the paper plate category. Meaning, when I'm in an acute season of overwhelm, like last fall, my book came out on August 5th. That was the day 2 years prior that my sister had passed away. So I was already very anxious on that day. And then 2 days later, my mother-in-law died. That was an acute season of overwhelm. I'm trying to launch a book. And also I was giving part of the eulogy at my mother-in-law's funeral. And as the now oldest matriarch of that family, had a lot of roles and responsibilities. And so I was very overwhelmed. But because I had already determined what are my paper plates, what are my plastic plates, I knew immediately what I could put down, knowing if I put these down, I can come back and pick them up at another time. And all the most important things, the china plates, the porcelain plates, the clay plates in my life will still be spinning because I'll have the energy to do so.
Wow. I love that. It's so important to just recognize that things are not all the same importance.
Right.
You know, your children's hearts are much more important than having a perfect garden or beautifully decorated house in this season.
Yes.
Your marriage is way more important than your Instagram. Like there are definitely priorities, and it's easy to get that out of whack. You know, especially I think one of the things that homeschool moms can really do is look at their spouse as like an accessory to all of their dreams instead of a
Mm.
friend. And maybe even depending on your theological views, the head of your home, and then really treat them with as a very low priority when actually your marriage relationship is one of the biggest indicators of the safety and security of your children, the well-being of your children, and many um, by many statistics, by many measurements. So
Yeah. We're such kindred spirits, Jennifer.
yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
nod my head enough.
Oh, yeah, and there's so many things we could keep talking about, but we're out of time, and so I'd love to have you just share, Jamie, what is one habit that's really helping you flourish in this season?
Well, it's a new habit, so here's hoping that it can continue and not just die off. But um, my family tip, I would say 90% of us are night owls, and I am not. And I have had over the years to adjust to that. And I have found in the last year or so that my night owlness has really limited my capacity and my ability to like get things done. And so I have just determined to get up, typically my family doesn't get up for hours, but I've determined to get up at like 5:45, 6 in the morning, in order to read my Bible, exercise, kind of prioritize some of the things that are really important to my personal holistic life, reading my Bible, exercising, and then also writing for about an hour because I'm on the clock now for another book. And so, in just doing that, in just getting up a few extra hours early and setting that as a habit, I feel like I have lived 3 or 4 lives before my kids even get up, and yet I'm still fully present. And actually, so many of those things before were kind of pushed off till later in the day. And so I would kind of feel this anxiousness or rush with my children, knowing, oh, I want to get to those things too. And now that I'm getting up earlier, I don't have that anxiety and that rush to end my time with my kids to get onto those things. So it has just been, I feel like I'm winning by leaps and bounds.
Oh, that's amazing, Jamie. And I know, if you're listening and you have a nursing baby or you're in those early newborn, it's not your season to get
It's
up
not your
early. So yeah,
season.
let this one habit go for you right now. But for sure, there's a season. I wrote most of my books in those early morning fringe hours. So I completely understand just the freshness that happens when you get up early. So Jamie, it's been such a joy to chat with you today. We're going to link the Overwhelmed Mom in the show notes. Your thoughts are going to be such encouragement to the Restoration Home podcast listeners. Thank you for joining today.
This was a joy. Thanks, Jennifer.